2 60th anniversary specials are almost upon us, and alongside that, the arrival of Shudigatwa's 15th Doctor. But before those specials air, why don't we take a look back and see who had the most and fewest stories of the Doctors that came before. Yo, what's up gamers? It's me, KipsterMc, and this month marks the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. And so far, as of last October's The Power of the Doctor, we have had full runs of 13 numbered Doctors. So before we get our new Doctors coming up with David Tennant as number 14 and Shudigatwa as number 15, why don't we rank all the previous Doctors by how many stories they had? Now I'm gonna have 3 rules for this. Rule number 1, numbered Doctors only, so Hartnell through Whittaker, so no War Doctor, Fugitive Doctor, Curse of Fatal Death Doctors, Shulka Doctors, Unbound Doctors, no Doctor Who. Rule number 2, televised main stories only, so no minisodes, no Big Finish, no comics, no novels, etc. Finally, rule number 3, for the modern series, multi-parters will count as one story rather than separate stories, despite being separate episodes. And to kick off our list, at the bottom in number 13th, to nobody's surprise, is Paul McGann's 8th Doctor, who only had one story, that being the TV movie from 1996. McGann was supposed to get a full run as the Doctor, as the TV movie was meant to act like a pilot for a full season, but that full season never got picked up, so aside from 2 later returns in The Night of the Doctor and The Power of the Doctor, Paul McGann's only TV story is the TV movie, meaning that he has the shortest run of any Doctor. Now granted, this has been more than made up for by Big Finish's phenomenal audio drama run, starring with 2001 Storm Warning, but on screen, McGann has the least screen time out of the Doctors. And in 12th place, Colin Baker's 6th Doctor at 8 stories. Now this one's a bit complicated because it's not entirely agreed upon by fans whether the Trial of the Time Lord is 1 story or 4, because on one hand, the DVD release marks it as 4 separate stories, but in the opening credits, it's all listed as 1 story, which is how I interpret it personally. Now, if you consider the Trial of the Time Lord to be 4 stories instead of 1, then that means that Baker has a total of 11 stories instead, which would put him in 11th place instead of 12th. But since I consider Trial of the Time Lord to be 1 story, he unfortunately only has 8. But hey, Big Finish also made up for that too, by giving him plenty of stories as well. And at number 11, is going to be Christopher Eccleston's 9th Doctor with 10 stories. Now, Eccleston was the Doctor who kicked off Modern Who, but he only played the role for 1 season before some stuff behind the scenes caused him to decide to leave. Now, despite being only around for 1 season, Eccleston did manage to establish many of the tropes of Modern Who. And now, for number 10, Sylvester McCoy's 7th Doctor, who had a total of 12 stories. Sylvester McCoy was the final Doctor of the classic series, having played the role for 3 seasons up until the show's cancellation in 1989. And in fact, McCoy also technically played the 6th Doctor since he filmed Colin Baker's regeneration scene wearing a wig and using special effects to hide his face, since Baker wasn't brought back to film his regeneration scene. And McCoy did eventually film his regeneration scene in Paul McGann's TV movie in 1996. And then, in 9th place, is Peter Davison's 5th Doctor, who had a total of 20 stories. Now, Peter Davison, who, fun fact, is the father-in-law of 10th Doctor actor David Tennant, had the rather unenviable task of being the immediate successor to the massive juggernaut that was Tom Baker's 4th Doctor. But he still made it work, playing the role for 3 years before stepping down and letting Colin Baker come into the role. And fun fact, Colin Baker actually originally appeared in the 5th Doctor era as another Time Lord character, playing Commander Maxwell of the Time Lord Chancellery Guard, and he even had a scene where he shot the 5th Doctor. The 5th Doctor was also the present Doctor during the show's 20th anniversary in 1983, being one of the Doctors who appeared in the 5 Doctors, that year's anniversary special. And coming up in 8th place is Patrick Troughton's 2nd Doctor with 21 total stories. Now, Patrick Troughton was the first actor to have to take on the role of Doctor from a previous actor, since William Hartnell's departure resulted in them creating the concept of regeneration, so that the Doctor can change appearance upon fatally dying. And Troughton played the role for 3 seasons before leaving to avoid being typecast. Unfortunately, though, thanks to the BBC's old policy of junking old programs, which lasted up until the mid-70s, much of Patrick Troughton's era is lost in time. And because of this, only 7 Second Doctor stories fully exist in the BBC archive, although there are other stories that have at least half their episodes remaining. And many of the stories that have half or more of their episodes missing have been given animated recreations for more recent DVD releases. So, we're at least still able to watch most of Patrick Troughton's run, albeit not all of it in its original format. But hey, hopefully those remaining missing episodes can be found one day. And then number 7 and number 6 are going to be tied together with the 3rd and 13th Doctors, each with 24 stories. The 3rd Doctor, who has the second most number of seasons out of any Doctor, with a total of 5, was the first Doctor to be in color, and his era is very notable for having a lot of Earthbound unit-based stories with what was known as the Unit family, with Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, Joe Grant, Sergeant Bing, Captain Yates, and the Master. But after 5 seasons, though, Pertwee ultimately decided to leave the role due to the death of Roger Delgado and the departure of Katie Manning and Barry Letts, as well as the shift away from the Earthbound unit stories. Now, for the most recent 13th Doctor, who, like many other Doctors, only played the role for 3 seasons before bowing out, was notable for being the first woman Doctor, which had some reactions online. Personally, I'd rather not associate with those reactions. Whittaker was also the most recent Doctor, having left only last October in a regeneration scene that did not 100% catch the entire Doctor Who fandom on surprise, but certainly got every single Doctor Who fan excited. I'm just gonna say that. And kicking up our top 5, in 5th place, is William Hartnell's first Doctor, with 29 stories. William Hartnell was the first ever actor to play the Doctor, and his era is what kicked off the show, introducing many important staples of the series, such as the Doctor, the TARDIS, the Daleks, the Cybermen, etc. And also, a villain from the first Doctor era, known as the Celestial Toymaker, is going to be one of the villains in the 60th anniversary specials, originally being played by Alfred Pennyworth himself, Michael Gow, and now being played by Neil Patrick Harris. Sadly, like with Patrick Troughton, much of the first Doctor's era is also lost in time. Now, while not as many of Hartnell's episodes are missing compared to Troughton's, much of Season 3 is still lost, and not as many of Hartnell's episodes have been animated compared to Troughton's. But we still have a good chunk of his era to watch, and his second season was the first ever 60s season to get a Blu-ray box set due to the fact that it was only missing 2 episodes, those being parts 2 and 4 of The Crusade. Hopefully one day, alongside the second Doctor's missing episodes, we'll be able to find all the missing first Doctor episodes as well. Now, Hartnell did ultimately have to leave the show 2 stories into its 4th season due to his failing health, and that's when they came up with the idea of regeneration, although it wasn't called that until the 3rd Doctor's final story, in order to introduce Patrick Troughton. And Hartnell himself would return one more time in the 3 Doctors, before all the later first Doctor appearances and multi-Doctor stories would have a recasted actor playing the role. Also, here's a fun fact. The first Doctor had the first ever Christmas special in Doctor Who history, with Part 7 of the Daleks' Master Plan, titled The Feast of Stephen. And in 4th place comes the 12th Doctor, played by Pier Capaldi, with a total of 35 stories. When he was cast, Pier Capaldi was actually the oldest actor to be cast as a main incarnation of the Doctor, being in his mid to late 50s when he played the role. Now, Capaldi did ultimately play the role for only 3 seasons, which I guess is the norm for the Doctor, you know? Before he ultimately left the same time as Stephen Moffat in 2017 after Series 10. Now, Capaldi did have a reduced episode count for his seasons compared to his predecessors, with Jodie Whittaker's era then reducing the episode count even further, but he still had quite a few stories, largely due to the fact that most episodes in Series 8 and 10 were single-parters rather than 2 or 3-parters. Then, 3rd place is the most iconic modern series Doctor, David Tennant's 10th Doctor, with 37 stories. Tennant played the role for, and you all know I'm gonna say it, 3 seasons before stepping down the same time as Russell T Davies in 2009. And while Eccleston's era made Doctor Who popular again, Tennant's era is what really pushed its success, to the point where many fans' favorite era to this day is still the 10th Doctor era. David Tennant also appeared in Season 3 of The Sarah Jane Adventures, and he also had 2 animated specials, The Infinite Quest and Dreamland. And something notable about his run, his first story was a Christmas special, as was his final story. And coming in at 2nd place is going to be Matt Smith's 11th Doctor, who had a total of 39 stories. You don't know I'm gonna say this, Matt Smith played the role for 3 seasons. It's kind of the norm for the Doctor, and Smith is the youngest actor to play the role, having been only 26 years old when he was cast. Now, both Peter Davison and Shuigawa were also pretty young when they were cast too, each being 29 years old, but that's still 3 years older than Smith was cast at. And Matt Smith is also the current Doctor during the show's 50th anniversary in 2013, being that he was the current current Doctor during what was probably the show's biggest year. And it would be in this year that he starred alongside David Tennant and John Hurt in the 50th anniversary special The Day of the Doctor, before he bowed out one episode later in The Time of the Doctor. This era also marked the first half of Stephen Moffat's run as showrunner. It also saw Doctor Who being heavily pushed in the US, marking the most successful era of the show in the US. And then, finally, in first place, you all know who it's gonna be, because it could not be anyone else, let's be real here. The Doctor with the most stories is Tom Baker's fourth Doctor, with a total of 41 stories. I mean, come on, who else was it gonna be? Baker had the longest tenure of any Doctor, playing the role for 7 seasons. The only Doctor that's come any close to that in terms of seasons was Jon Pertwee, and even then, he was still 2 seasons shorter. Baker is easily the most recognizable of the classic Doctors, especially in the US, since during the classic series, his stories were the ones that were aired the most. And to this day, many people still consider Tom Baker to be the most definitive Doctor due to how long he was the Doctor for, and how much of an impact he played in the show. Now, Tom Baker did state later on that he felt like he was in the show for a season too long, and the funny thing about that is that if he had left the show a season prior, he would only be in 3rd place on this list behind both Tennant and Smith. Kind of funny to think about. All it took was only a season difference, despite how long his run was. But I guess that's just to be expected when classic Doctor Who goes for a few multi-episode storylines per season, whereas modern Doctor Who is mostly single-parters and occasional 2-parters. And that's gonna be it for this list. Don't forget to like, dislike, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed this video and want to support my content, and I'll be back in the next video. I hope you're excited for Doctor Who's 60th anniversary.